Good evening. I'm so glad to get a few minutes together, and this special Monday, Tuesday time. It may go to Wednesday, but I'm thinking Monday and Tuesday. With our political world, with our religious world, with the things that have gone on in our country lately and are going on now, I thought it'd be great if we could take a few minutes in our Bible. If you have a Bible handy, I'd like you to look over to the book of Exodus, chapter 1. And we're going to take a few minutes and take the story of the first few chapters of Exodus and have a lesson in civics or government, however you want to call it, but a Bible lesson with some civics and government lessons thrown in. And then I want to throw something out to you that's exciting. A couple of people came to me and said that they have this money, that the checks that are coming from the government, they said we've not missed a paycheck. Their job is paying them, and their work's going on. They're working some from home, but their paycheck's not any different. And they said we don't. There's no need for us to have this money, so we're going to give it, and they're going to give it to missions into the church to keep providing for the extra needs for the church and also for unusual needs. If you weren't in church yesterday, there's a couple of special projects we're talking about doing, and I think, man, that's great. When we get extra money from somewhere, we want to tithe, but to know that it's really something that could be used for others. We've got missionaries in need, church needs, families that are in need. I think of some small local businesses I know, and how much it'd be fun to be able to walk into one of those businesses. And you may know someone, and to be able to walk in and put a couple $100 bills on the counter and just say, I'm praying for you and your business. What a blessing we could be to people. And leave them a gospel tract if you want, and let them know you care, and allow that money that's extra to be used of God. But whatever you want to do, obviously, is your call. But I just thought it was neat. And one of these people was a senior citizen, and so on Social Security, and I thought, they said we've not missed any. In fact, two of our seniors on Social Security have said they want to give extra out of that. So, but anyway, I love the people of God and what God's doing, and I love Sundays, and I look forward to the day we'll all be together again. I look forward to the day our children will have Sunday school again. For the moment, let's look here at Exodus chapter 1, and I want to take a few minutes here, and it's not going to be very long because I want to take a little bit of time tonight, a little tomorrow on this. But this is the way government works. Now, you've heard me say it. Government is an evil thing. Government is a dangerous thing. It's like a wild animal. It's got to be caged. It's got to be chained down. We need government. God created civil government, and it is right. But wow, if you get the wrong people, when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. When the wicked are in authority, the people mourn. The proverb says, and government can just cause everybody heartache and such grief, and we see that around America. Decisions made nationally as well as state to state, some very tragic decisions, and we better be praying for God's mercy on our country. But I want you to see some things about government, and in the book of Exodus that applies so much to right where we are. The battle we've had just with having the freedom to have a drive-in church service. There is no question that our drive-in church service was safer, and it was more health conscious, and we provided a more secure environment than any grocery store, any hardware store, any liquor store, any candy store, ice cream store. They're all open. My wife and I walked into Subway and got a sub sandwich, and we're in and out and exchanging things and talking to people in there, and social distancing, obviously. But I want you to see how government is pictured in the book of Exodus. So look with me first in the book of Exodus chapter 1 and verse 1. They list the names of the children of Israel. Jacob's name changed to Israel. He's got his 12 boys and his daughter, and they all 70 of them go down to Egypt. Joseph was there already. In verse 6, Joseph died and his brethren, and the nation of Israel flourished. And remember, Egypt would have been destroyed were it not for Joseph. And so literally every Egyptian owed their very existence to Israel. And so if they knew where they came from, they'd realize those Israelite people, we owe them. And the Israelite people were causing no trouble. There was no strife between Egypt and Israel. There was no tension. There was no threats. There was no anarchy. The Egyptians were fine. The Israelites were fine. They were the land of Goshen, where Joseph and his family, Israel and his family, Jacob changed to Israel. All the Israelites settled there. They were shepherds. I guess it was a better land for the sheep to grow or whatever. But they had their own section of the country, you might say, and there was no problems. But notice some things. I'm going to give you just 3 or 4 things today and 3 or 4 things tomorrow about this matter of government and the dangers of government. Number 1, look at Exodus chapter 1, verse 8. Now there rose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph. Now, if you take notes, one of our guys came in and gave me all these notes from my different morning and evening posts and my Sunday sermons, Wednesday Bible studies. And, if you take notes or whatever, fine. If not, you can just listen. But number 1, the problem with government starts when the people in leadership and government don't know their history. When the people in leadership do not know their history. There was recently, in the last few days, a governor being interviewed, and he'd made some rules that very clearly overstepped the bounds of people's freedom. Free exercise for religion and freedom of speech. And the guy interviewing him, nationwide TV and news, the guy interviewed him said, "Governor, did it ever occur to you that you were stepping on their constitutional rights, the First Amendment, their freedom of speech," and on and on. And the guy, as casual as could be, as if it was the most logical thing in the world, he said, "It never crossed my mind. I guess the violation of their constitutional rights is above my pay grade. I think, you know what, you need to get fired. You need to go back and be the garbage collector and go to school and learn your history and find out where we got our Bill of Rights and where we got our Constitution and where we got, why did Americans come to America? And how did we get, why the first, the Bill of Rights, why is it so big about the freedom of press and freedom of religion and free exercise of our religion? And why the Second Amendment being the right to keep and bear arms? Why was that so big? Well, see, if you don't know your history and you're in leadership, you start making decisions on the basis of what you see or what you feel and not on the basis of fact. And so what we see here is we've got a king that rose up who did not know Joseph. He didn't know the story. He didn't realize how they literally owed their very existence to the people of Israel. So first problem in government, the problem all starts when our leaders don't know their history. We are not a socialist country. We became a independent democracy, a constitutional republic, because we came out of a socialistic world. We came out of monarchy. We came out of dictatorships, and we were sick of government telling us what to do. So we created a totally new thing, a place where people are free, and that the rights of the people shall not be infringed upon, and equal justice for all, the liberty and justice for all. I talked to somebody over this whole thing about us having church and the rights to have church, and explain safety things that we were doing, and we were safer than this and this and this, and yet we were told we couldn't. I said, do you remember the phrase with liberty and justice for all? Do you remember that? See, when leaders don't know their history, they start making up stupid rules, stupid laws, and it's, if you don't know history, you don't know these things. So number 1, it all starts with leaders not knowing their history. Number 2, look down at verse 9. And he, so this is the king over Egypt, he said to his people, "Behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. Come, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply. And it come to pass that when there falleth out any war, they join also with our enemies and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land." Now, there was no problem between Israel and Egypt. There was no war. There was no difficulty First problem, when our leaders don't know their history. Second problem is when our leaders start imagining problems that aren't there. When our leaders and our rulers start making policy and creating protocols and enacting things that have to be done by everybody out of the imagination of their own heart. Maybe someday there'll be a war, and maybe Israel will join our enemies, and maybe they'll rebel and fight against us. So we got to do something. And haven't we seen the emotionally driven, the panic driven, the fear mongering? Haven't we seen a movement in America where leaders were imagining what might be, what could be? And you know what? I've got a right to an opinion like anybody else, and I could be wrong, but I kind of think somebody overshot this thing, and I think people had forgotten our liberties, and they've imagined things far beyond reality. And here in this day, he certainly did that. And this king imagined things that were nothing, absolutely nothing to do with reality. Peaceful cohabitation between these two people groups, and yet he imagined war and he imagined fighting, and so he began. So number three problem, look at verse 11. Therefore did they set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens, and they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses. And the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew. Now, the first problem I said is when leaders don't know their history. They don't understand the Constitution. They don't understand the Declaration. They don't understand the Bill of Rights. They don't understand where we came from and who we are. Second problem is when government begins inventing problems that are not there. Now, I don't have a problem with anticipating and watching and being prepared. Proverbs says that the wise man foreseeth the evil, and nothing wrong with thinking ahead, nothing wrong with realizing you need to change these brakes before they go out or change these tires before they blow out. Nothing wrong with that at all. But let's don't destroy a society on what might never be. And again, here we saw, and if you read these first few chapters, you see a whole culture decimated. And it all started with government leaders not knowing their history, number one. Number two, imagining that which is not there. And then number three, government begins to encroach on the jobs of the people. And so we read there in verse 11 that they took the people from their regular jobs and moved them into building for the government. And the only place you're going to get a job, they made them work for the federal government. And they were slave labor, literally, but they mess with their work. They mess with their income. They mess with their jobs. And it all started not knowing their history, imagining that which is not there. And then thirdly, they began to encroach on the private lives of the people, especially in way of their jobs. I don't know if that could ever happen in America. Number 4, look at verse 11 again. They set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens. Number 4, the number 4 problem that takes place is evil governments set people over the common man, telling him what to do. They set people over. So here's the government. They don't know their history. They imagine things that aren't really there. They begin to encroach upon the jobs and the private lives of the citizens. And then this evil government begins to appoint people. Next level down, these are called bureaucrats. These are supposed to be elected. These are appointed. And the government appoints these bureaucrats to begin to tell the common man what he can and can't do. And I'm sitting here as a pastor. I don't even know who to call to see if we can get permission to meet in the parking lot as a church. I called our assemblywoman, great lady who stood with us, and not just with us, but with churches, Melissa Melendez. And she said, that's not my call, that's not my area, but I'm with you, and we believe like that. And she was doing what she could. We called Kevin Jeffries, one of our county supervisors, And he said that wasn't a decision I was involved in. He did get involved though, but the decision was not his. It's not like he could make that. We couldn't figure out who made that decision. You see, the government appointed people who were now telling the common man what he could and could not do. And literally they were afflicting the people of God. Number 5, look down at verse 14. And they made their lives bitter with hard bondage in mortar and in brick and in all manner of service in the field. All their service wherein they made them serve was with rigor. Now here's the point. The next thing that happens, number 5, number 1, it starts with people, with the leaders not knowing their history. Number 2, the government invents problems that are not there, or they overreact to problems that might be there. Number 3, the government begins to encroach on the private lives of people through their jobs. And number 4, the government appoints taskmasters, people to tell the common man what he can and cannot do. And number 5, they start making the lives hard. They just make it hard. They make it hard to get through a day. Have we not in America for the last 5 weeks, has it not been hard? I get up, I don't know what to do. And no, usually we've got this routine, this cadence we're in. People aren't going to work. They're trying to work from home. People are trying to do online church. They're trying to do online school. Teachers, thousands of students trying to figure out how to do school work with teachers, and how are we going to get computers these kids? What about these poorer children that don't have internet and they don't have computers in their homes, and some have been given tablets and different things that they can use, but they don't have internet. They don't, no one's instructed them how to use the devices, and little, I'm talking about 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old kids, computers thrown into the home so they could do school. They don't know how to run a computer. You know what's happened? These people underneath the government who are telling people what to do, they are making life hard. And that's what they did for Israel. And you see, the government doesn't like people doing their own thing. Governments in general do not like freedom. Governments like control. Now, I love America. I'm a patriot through and through. I love America. I love the flag. I can weep looking at a copy of the Constitution. I love America. And our nation was founded on these principles of freedom and liberty and justice. And it was a new thing, and they had to fight their way out of. Our people didn't even know how to think free. Our leaders had to figure out what did it mean to be free, and they argued and fought with the Continental Congress. Boy, they fought and argued, trying to figure out the way to make equality between larger cities and smaller rural communities. But you know what? They gave us a nation that has pushed freedom around the world. It was not easy, but I'll tell you what, government doesn't stay like that unless somebody binds that government and chains them down. And that's why Thomas Jefferson said, enough with trusting men, bind them down with the chains of the Constitution. And so these 5 simple points, now I've got 5 more we'll do tomorrow night. These 5 simple points, if you want to know this monster of government that begins to grow, and it begins to grow, and it's grabbing, it's like a fire consuming the next branch, the next house, the next field. And government, the only thing that keeps government from completely oppressing the people is when the people stop it. Because government is not by nature good. Government is not by nature freedom loving. Government loves itself. And boy, President Trump, a lot of his trouble, he's talked about draining the swamp. He didn't know how deep it was, nor how dark and dirty it was, and he didn't know how many people were in that swamp. And people that are gone for life, they've been lurking around like the Loch Ness monster, and people don't even know they're there. And the troubles of government worldwide, Hitler, Stalin, Mao, and across the world, the King of England, the Queens of England, the various monarchs. These people, they wanted to rule people. And our country gave us this most amazing honor and privilege of saying, we will throw you out of office if we don't like you. And we're struggling with that because there are so many people down the chain of command, we don't know who to throw out. On our last few weeks over this thing about just the simplicity of just being able to We want to keep health laws, but we want to be able to drive into church. We didn't even know who to write letters to. We didn't know who to get mad at for all of the hidden lawyers. And I managed to get an attorney on the phone and talk with them. But nobody who's responsible was willing to answer a phone call and chat and logic through things. And again, I think they have burdens on them that we don't know about. So let's give everybody a measure of grace. But number one, problems happen when we elect people to office who do not know our history. They are not historians. They don't know constitutional history. We've got problems. Number two, we have problems when the government invents problems that are not there. And boy, does your media ever do that. They love blowing everything up. The media just loves to make big and emotionalize and it's never as big as it sounds. But government loves it. The one governor or mayor, he said, I want 30,000 ventilators, and it turned out they needed 5,000 or 6,000. Government just loves to expand and get bigger, and how big this hurricane's going to be, and how all these things. Government is like a junior high girl. They want to over emotionalize everything. No offense, you junior high girls. Number three, government begins to encroach on the jobs of the common man, and government begins to get involved in the private lives of people. Number four, government sets people under the government leaders who are over the common man, telling him what to do and what not to do. And then number five, those people begin making life harder. The bottom line is they make life harder. Our government is here to protect us so that we can live a life of freedom. The government doesn't owe us any money. The government doesn't owe us they owe us protection so we can go live our own lives. And so tomorrow night, we'll talk a little bit more about it. But I'm passionate about government. I'm passionate about America. And I love this. I just happened to be studying Exodus the last few days, and I thought, man, this fits so good. Tomorrow night, we'll go the next 3 or 4 or 5 points on this as we look at the book of Exodus, Moses, the great deliverer, and how did Moses stop the encroachment of the government. It's great stuff. See you tomorrow morning if you come to get into my morning moments, or tomorrow night we'll get back in the book of Exodus.